Well, hi everybody. Here we are. Uh, it's a little weird doing my first hangout. I've taught so many classes and done so many things on TV and different things. It's weird to be sitting here in my own family room talking to my computer. I had hoped to be able to do a Q&A, a 10-minute Q&A at the end of this video, but of course, as always happens, the day of an event, for some reason, my Q&A has been disabled on my Google Plus on the Hangout. So unless it starts working sometime soon, we're just gonna have to go without. And I'm sorry, but that was my main thing I was so excited about, is to be able to do the Q&A at the end, have you leave comments and things like that. So I'll have to kind of look around and see if we can make that work at some point. Well, really quick, let's go ahead and get started. Let me just, for those of you who are new to my site or are visiting this on YouTube, just so you know, my name is Melissa Richardson. I'm the bread geek. I am a huge advocate of all things whole grain and eating whole grains properly prepared in the proper proportions. So I have also authored 2 cookbooks, the first one being this one. You can see it, The Art of Baking with Natural Yeast. That one's been out for about 2 years now. And then coming in September, I'm so excited, is the second book. That's the back. Beyond Basics with Natural Yeast. And this has even more recipes, tips, and tricks, and everything that you're just going to want. Let's do this right. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So here's the second book, Beyond Basics. It's available on Amazon for pre-order, and it will be released in September. Very excited about this book. So let's get to it. Let's start talking about flax. There are a lot of things to talk about with flax, because with the whole gluten-free movement and people wanting to incorporate other grains into their diet, also with a lot of people starting to have egg allergies, wanting to use different binders, because egg typically is a binder in baking. It's what allows you to fluff something up so that when it bakes, it will stay puffed up and hold its shape. So there are 2 things that usually do that in baking. One is the gluten in wheat, and the other being eggs. So if you're trying to stay away from wheat, or if you're trying to stay away from eggs, you probably know all about flax. If you know someone who is having to eat that way, you're probably having to get to know flax too. But there's still a lot of people who don't know how to use flax in baking, who don't understand it, don't have much of a concept of the food itself. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to provide here in this little hangout in this video. What is flax? How do we use it? And what are the things that we should know about flax as a food to be cautious about as we proceed and begin to use flax in our everyday baking? So first of all, what the heck is flax? If you don't know, it's just this teeny little seed, and I'm going to show you right here. I have some in a jar. There we go. This is dark brown flax. There's also golden flax. The golden flax is really pretty. This flax, though, I like. It shows up better in bread. One isn't better than the other. They're just 2 different colors, 2 different forms of flax. As you can tell, the seeds are very tiny, which is why they're so difficult to harvest, and probably what contributes to flax being so expensive. So flax is a plant that grows. It grows very tall. The percentage of the plant that actually becomes the flaxseed is very, very minuscule. Most of the plant is a very long, tall, reed-like plant that grows in different places across the world. In New Zealand, the Maori culture has used flax for forever. Mostly, though, they use the fibers of the plant itself for weaving. Have you ever heard of linen? Well, linen is made from flax. The other name for flax is linseed. So if you're wondering, linseed, linen, it comes from the same plant. And flaxseed is actually, flax, the plant, is very, very good for weaving. Very good for people who don't want to use animal-based products for their clothing. So it's a plant. It's a tall reed. Grows a lot of places, but the percentage of the plant that's actually the seed is very, very small as compared to something like wheat or other grains like that. So now we move on. how do we use flax? How do we use it in baking? Well, like I said, flax is a binder. It's something that is going to kind of gel up and use, kind of create a little bit of a webbing to be able to allow us to leaven something and have it maintain its height. So it's kind of like creating a parachute that can then be inflated. So that's how flax functions in baking. What the amazing thing about flax is flax has the ability, when you get it wet, a lot of different reactions occur, and it creates what's called a mucilage on the outside of the seed. So, and this is very similar to chia seeds, if you're familiar with chia seeds, but it creates this mucilage. Now, the mucilage is actually, in a lot of ways, a protector for the plant, but we'll get into that more. I'm getting ahead of myself. I do that a lot. So it creates this mucilage, and the mucilage is what we use as the binder. It creates a sticky substance that allows it to be used in baking. So what I have done here now, if you're going to be eating flax whole flax is not really the best way to consume flax, because the mucilage allows the flax to go right through your system without being digested. It creates kind of a protective barrier that protects it from your intestines. So consuming whole flax doesn't really do a whole lot for you nutritionally, except maybe act as roughage, kind of like fiber in your diet. Other than that, it's not very helpful if you're eating it whole. I don't usually like to buy flax meal, just because, once that hull is breached, once the seed is breached, you begin to lose nutritional value. It's just, it begins to break down. So I grind my own flax seed. Here I have, this is, I do it in my Magic Bullet, and I love my Magic Bullet for things like this. You can also do it in a coffee grinder, but this is flax meal. I got it kind of as fine as I could, but it's very easy to make at home, and it grinds up really nicely. So what we're going to do really quick is I'm going to teach you how to make a flax egg, and so that now the egg, meaning if you're using a recipe that calls for egg and you don't want to use the egg, or if you're making something that doesn't contain wheat and you want to use it as a binder, a lot of websites call it a flax egg. So we're going to make a flax egg. I'm going to show you how to do that, so you know how to do it in baking. So what we're going to do is I have my little bowl here, and then I'm going to take a 1 tablespoon measure. Okay, so I'm going to set down my bowl right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 tablespoon of flax. Now, it doesn't have to be even. I'm not very accurate with my baking stuff. Those of you who know me know that I kind of wing it a little bit, and I think it's important to learn how to wing it. So we're going to dump that in. That's 1 tablespoon of flax meal. Now I'm going to take a little bit of water, and I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of water to my flax meal. Okay, so I'm going to do that, add that water. Now you can add 2 to 3 tablespoons. Usually I tend to go a little bit more towards 2. I don't usually do 3 unless I want it to be a little bit runnier and a little bit, you can kind of control the consistency more that way. If you want it to be a little bit more liquid, then you can only do, you can do 3. If you want it to be a little bit less liquid, then you can only do 2. So what you do is you're going to make that, and then you're going to set it aside. You can see it's still really liquid. It's not really gelled up. So I'm going to show you of some flax that I gelled up earlier. So this is in a little bit bigger bowl, but you can see here that this has become very, very goopy. Now that was with the same amount of water that I just put in that last one. So you can see how that would make a pretty good binder in a recipe that would kind of hold things together. All right, so so the first thing that we do, so again, for a flax egg, you're going to do 1 tablespoon of flax meal to 2 tablespoons of water. You can also use 3 tablespoons of water if you want it to be a little bit more liquid, a little bit runnier. So we use the flax. You can use the meal by just putting it into breads and pancakes and whatever else, just to boost nutritional content. You can use the meal, you can use it as a flax egg. The other thing that's really interesting, now I have not done this yet myself, but you can also, I've watched people do it, you can actually take this and get a hand mixer and whip this into like a meringue. Obviously, it's going to have the little pieces of the flax in it still, but you can whip it up into an egg white type substance that could then be folded into a recipe like muffins or something like that, where you have a little bit more delicate structure. So that's another way that you can use flax meal. Another way that I like to use it actually is if I'm going to be putting it into bread, I'll add a little bit of the meal, but I'll also I'll take some and put them in a pan on the stove, and I'll roast them. Flax seeds, because they're small, and I don't know what it is that makes them do this, but they do pop. So you'll want to cover the pan when you're roasting the flax seeds. I'll just put, like a few tablespoons of flax in a pan, and then turn it on and just roast them, stir them around until they start to pop. Then I cover it and roast it a little bit. Your house will start to smell really, really good. And that's because the flax oils are being released. Flax oil is good for you also. So it's just a good way to release those oils, get those kind of out of the seeds, so that when you do digest it, even though you can't digest the flax itself, some of those oils will be on the surface and be able to be digested. So roasting flax seeds is another great way to consume flax. So I think that covers everything for making or using flax in your baking. Here's a few tips and tricks, things that I wish I had known as I started using flax in my baking. You have to be careful how much flax you use. There are recipes for like entirely flax like muffins and things like that, and I've made some of those. But the hard thing is that when you have something that's more of a mucilage like flax is, as opposed to egg, which has a little bit firmer structure to it than the flax does. This is much more wet. Is the only way I can describe it. Is it tends to kind of, when you use more than 1 or 2 or maybe 3 eggs in a recipe, flax eggs in a recipe, it tends to start to weigh down the recipe. Part of it is because I think it's heavier than its structure can support when it has been incorporated into a recipe. So it will bind and it will allow the bread to rise to a certain degree, but it's not strong enough to really hold it. So what happens a lot of times is that as it cooks, it kind of firms a little bit, but it kind of just stays a little bit gooey when you get above 3 flax eggs in a recipe. So I've found that the more flax I use, the item that I'm baking then tends to be a little bit more dense and a little bit more gooey in the middle. Also, if you're using something that has a large amount of flax in it, you'll want to bake it. Let's say you're making, you want to make like an apple little pastry. You'll want to make it in a like a muffin tin or something with tall sides and a very small center. That way you're getting the support of the sides of the pan, so that as you're baking, the dough can rise up the side, be supported by the side, and then maintain its shape. Now really quick, I'm going to screen share with you here for a second and show you a couple pictures of some of the things that I baked that had a lot of flax in them. Let's switch this over. Okay. So let's go. Oh goodness, is it going to let me do it? Okay, it's not even going to let me screen share. Oh, here we go. So let's see if we can get this. My computer's a little slow, so hopefully you're still with me and we can screen share here. Oh, that's my Hangout there. Let's pull this up. So this is an apple bread that I had made a while ago. Now you can see I made it in the mini loaf pan, but as you can see, it kind of dipped down in the middle. I don't know if you can notice that there where my mouse is pointing. It kind of caved down in the middle a little bit, and that is because even though we had good structure on the sides, we were missing the structure in the middle, and so it did kind of collapse and was a little bit gooey on the inside. The other thing I'd wanted to show you was here. I have a muffin that I had made. It was all made from flax. Here's, let's see, here is how it looked before. Let's see. Let's get that there. Okay. So here's the muffin. Now remember, because it's a muffin, it didn't sink down too much in the middle, but it did a little bit. You can see. This was like another apple little tart. But when you look at the inside, it was great. It had great flavor, but you can see that it's a little bit gummy on the inside, a little bit wet on the inside, and rather dense. So that's kind of, you know, what you're going to get when you oh, wow, that's interesting. We're getting, let's turn off the screen shader. So that's what you're going to kind of get when you get, there we go, now I'm back. When you're baking with large amounts of flax, it's going to be a little heavier. It's going to be, have a little bit harder time maintaining the leaven. Also, some people think that if you add more and more and more leavener, that will really puff it up and maintain it. Again, the flax can't really handle the weight of everything else. So what will happen is you'll blow up your batter, and then the structure isn't strong enough to support it. So as you bake, it will just collapse down in the middle again. So keep your flax content to, you know, around 2 to maybe 3 eggs per recipe, flax eggs again. So last thing, I'm going to just do a little introduction to the research that I'm going to be posting to the blog next week. And again, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but my blog is thebreadgeek.com, and I post a lot of stuff there about bread and things you need to know about baking and other things. I do hear my little sleeper that was supposed to sleep through this. Hopefully he'll stay quiet for these last 10 minutes. So the research. Most of you know that flax is really good for you in a lot of different ways. It is good for heart health. It is good for brain health. You know, it has a lot. It does have the omega-3s in it, and there's tons and tons of research. Going back to, you know, Hippocrates had recommended flax as a dietary aid for nutrition. So the history of flax and consuming flax as a dietary aid goes back for thousands of years. But here's the thing that we have to remember, and we have to constantly remember this, because it's easy for us to think of food as capsules, things that are regulated by the FDA or whatever and can't cause us any harm. We have to remember that this little thing here that we have, we can't even see it, it's so small. These little flax seeds are seeds. They are little suspended living organisms that are just trying to grow a plant, and they do not want to be consumed. They have ways of protecting themselves from you and from me and from our digestive systems. The first one being phytic acid. Phytic acid, if you remember from my book, if you read my book, The Art of Baking with Natural Yeast, phytic acid is kind of the guardian. He is the one that will try to protect all of the, oh, there's my little sleeper, that will try to protect all of the nutrients in the seed from being digested. So the phytic acid content of flax is comparable to that of wheat. It's pretty much identical. So you don't want to be consuming large amounts of untreated flaxseed. Here's the thing, with the mucilage, you can't really treat phytic acid very well. You could grind it and soak it, and you know, for a long time, and then dry it. There you go. There you go. But it's very difficult because it's such a small grain. So it can be very hard to neutralize the phytic acid in flax. The second thing is that it does contain a lot of phytoestrogens, which, to be honest, I just don't know quite what to make of. So much research on phytoestrogens, so many conflicting views. My suggestion is to just keep it minimal. So you've got the phytoestrogens, which can be problematic, you know, they say in males, according to some research. And again, I'm posting this research to the blog next week. But one of the things that has recently come out that that is a little bit, we should be a little bit cautious about, is the omega-3s versus omega-6s. Proportionally speaking, flax has more omega-6s than omega-3s. Now, the omega-6s can cause trouble for us. Also, the ALA that's available in those omega-3s in flax is not necessarily nutritionally available to us. Our body can convert it, but it kind of does a poor job of converting it into the forms of nutrition that we need. So while it does have the omega-3s, our body does struggle a little bit to convert that into what we need for our bodies. What happens then is that you have excess ALA that is floating around in your digestive system, which isn't very good for you. Especially, yes, go ahead and have some. Especially in males, they found that at a high rate of ALAs, or a high percentage of ALAs in the male system can lead to, I'm going to have a photobomber here in a second, can lead to increased risk of prostate cancer, which we don't really want to mess with. And so we should be cautious, down you go, in doing that, in consuming too much in males. And the other thing is that they do recommend that pregnant women not consume large amounts of flax because of the phytoestrogens. It can actually cause you to go into preterm labor. So we don't really want to have preterm labor. So as you can see, flax, it does have its good qualities, but it does have its problems as well. So, you know, you become a mom and you think, I can still do this. But then they just want to be stars of the show, and it was hot, so I let him sleep without his sleeper on, and now here we have a half-naked baby photobombing my live on-air hangout. I hope you enjoy this child. I do. He's cute. But he always knows when his mama is doing something important and wants to come and play too, huh? Yeah. So, what I say about flax is, as far as the research goes, is to please just be cautious. Be cautious about the quantity that you're consuming. You don't want to consume too much flax. Just the mere fact that it is difficult to, that it is a little bit more difficult to cultivate and to harvest. Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead. That it's more expensive, those things should give us an indication of what quantity we should be consuming. We should not be consuming large amounts of flax. I do, see, he says it's good. The flax is good. Now you know. We shouldn't be over-consuming flax. You can use it as a nutritional kind of a supplement in small doses, but I don't recommend using it, dumping it in everything. You know, don't put it on your cereal and in your bread and on your salads. And I mean, you have to be careful about how much you're going to use, because it gets to a point where it can start to not be as healthy for you. So, on that note, I don't want any. Oh, sure, I'll taste it. Oh, okay. There we go. Yum. Thank you. On that note, and now that this one's awake, an hour early, we're going to pull this little hangout to a close. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and hope you learned something about flax. Please visit the blog next week for links to the research that I was mentioning, if you'd like to learn more about that. And visit me on, you can also visit me on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter. My handle is @thebreadgeek. So I look forward to visiting more with you, and again, hope this was helpful. And next time we're really going to shoot for a Q&A. I don't know why that got disabled today, because it wasn't before. But I hope you're having a great day, and hope that all your bread experiments go well. We'll talk to you later.